The rope still swayed from the barn beam when Samuel Hartwell heard the crying. He had been standing in his doorway for the better part of an hour, staring at that rope, wondering if tonight would finally be the night. 3 months since Martha died. 3 months since the fever took everything that mattered. The ranch felt like a tomb now, all silence and shadows, and Samuel had been measuring that silence against the weight of hemp fiber and gravity. But the crying, thin, desperate, drifted up from the road like smoke. Samuel grabbed his lantern and stepped into the November cold. Frost crunched beneath his boots as he walked toward the sound, the yellow light casting long fingers across the prairie grass. The crying stopped, replaced by whispers so soft they might have been wind. He found them huddled against the roadside fence post like discarded laundry. A girl, maybe 8, with tangled brown hair and a face that had forgotten what warmth felt like. A boy, smaller, pressed against her side with his thumb in his mouth and eyes that reflected Samuel's lantern like a spooked animal's. "Please, mister," the girl whispered, her voice cracked like kindling. "We ain't thieves. We was just resting." Samuel lowered the lantern. The children's clothes hung in tatters, their skin stretched tight over sharp bones, and when the boy shifted, Samuel caught sight of bare feet blue with cold. No shoes, no coats, nothing but each other and the bitter November wind that would kill them before sunrise. The girl tried to stand, pulling her brother with her. "We'll move on. Don't want no trouble." But Samuel was already seeing Martha in that hospital bed, her hand clutching his as the fever burned through her like wildfire. "Promise me something, Samuel. Promise me you won't let this world make you hard. There's enough hardness already." "Both of you," Samuel said, his voice rough as sea. "And paper. Inside now." The girl froze. "Mister?" Samuel turned toward the house, the rope in his barn suddenly feeling very far away. "You heard me. Inside, before you freeze to death on my property and give the county something to talk about." Behind him, he heard small feet stumbling through the frost, following his light toward the yellow windows of home. The children sat at Martha's kitchen table like they expected to be thrown out any moment. Samuel ladled bean soup into 2 bowls, his hands shaking slightly as he watched them devour the food with desperate efficiency. When had he last cooked for someone else? When had these walls heard anything but his own footsteps? "What are your names?" Samuel asked. The girl looked up, broth on her chin. "I'm Lucy. This here's Tom. He don't talk much since—" She trailed off, protective instincts flaring. "Since we been on the road." "How long?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. Lucy's eyes darted toward the door. "Our he took sick. Died in Millerville. Town folks said they'd find us homes, but—" She pulled Tom closer, said they'd have to split us up. "I ain't letting nobody take Tom from me." Samuel felt something crack inside his chest. He remembered being 10 years old, watching his own father waste away from consumption, remembered the fear of being alone in a world that ate children like prairie fire consumed grass. "You got anywhere to go?" Lucy shook her head. "Got an aunt in Colorado, maybe, but that's a long way, and winter's coming hard." Samuel poured himself coffee with hands that remembered Martha's touch, remembered her laugh echoing in these same rooms. The children finished their soup and sat watching him with the careful attention of creatures who'd learned that human kindness often came with a price. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, the silence stretched like a held breath. "You can stay, Denig," Samuel said finally. "Both of you. There's a room upstairs." Lucy's face transformed, hope blooming like spring flowers. "Really, mister? We won't be no trouble, I swear. I can cook and clean and—" "Samuel? Name's Samuel Hartwell." He stood, collecting the empty bowls. "And we'll see about the rest come morning." But even as he spoke, Samuel felt the weight of decision settling around him like a noose. 2 orphans in a house that had barely survived 1 death. A man who'd been measuring rope against grief. What business did he have trying to save anyone else when he couldn't even save himself? Through the kitchen window, he caught sight of distant riders moving along the horizon. Too far to make out clearly, but something about their formation made his stomach clench. In the morning, there would be questions. There always were. The pounding on Samuel's door came with the dawn, sharp and official. Samuel had been awake since 4, sitting at his kitchen table with cold coffee and watching Lucy braid her brother's hair with the tenderness of someone twice her age. Now, Tom hid behind his sister while Lucy pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide with the kind of terror that came from experience. "Open up, Hartwell! Sheriff's business!" Samuel recognized Jim Bradley's voice. The county sheriff who had drunk away his badge's authority years ago, but still wore it like armor against his failures. Samuel opened the door to find Bradley flanked by two men he didn't recognize. City clothes, government bearing. "Morning, Jim." "Samuel." Bradley's eyes were bloodshot, his stance unsteady. "These gentlemen are from the state orphanage in Millerville. Seems some children went missing from their care. Word is you might know something about that." The taller government man stepped forward, consulting a leather folder. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm Inspector Crane. We're looking for two children, Lucy and Thomas Morrison, ages 8 and 6. Last seen fleeing Millerville 3 weeks ago after their father's death." Samuel felt Lucy tense behind him, heard Tom's sharp intake of breath. "Don't know anything about missing children." Inspector Crane smiled without warmth. "Of course not. Mind if we take a look around, just to be thorough?" It wasn't a request. Samuel stepped aside, watching as the men filed into his home like vultures circling carrion. They moved through the rooms with practiced efficiency, opening closets, checking corners, their boots loud on Martha's clean floors. Bradley lingered near Samuel, whiskey fumes mixing with morning cold. "Sam, these kids belong in proper care. Institutions got doctors, teachers, regular meals. Institutions also got bars on the windows and children who disappear into work farms," Samuel said quietly. "That's not your concern." Inspector Crane had returned, empty-handed but suspicious. "If these children surface, Mr. Hartwell, you're legally obligated to report them. Harboring runaways is a serious offense." Through the kitchen window, Samuel caught a flash of movement in the barn. Lucy and Tom, hidden in the hayloft where he had showed them the night before. Smart girl, but how long before someone thought to look there? "I'll keep that in mind," Samuel said. Crane handed him a card. "We'll be staying in town for a few days, just in case." His smile was all teeth and threat. "Good morning, Mr. Hartwell." As the men mounted their horses, Samuel realized he was standing at a crossroads with no safe turns. Keep the children and face the law. Turn them over and watch them disappear into a system that ground up the unwanted like wheat. Either choice would damn him, but only one would damn them all. That evening, Samuel found Lucy sitting in Martha's rocking chair, holding something small and silver in her palms. Tom slept curled against her side like a kitten seeking warmth. The house felt fuller somehow, as if these two small lives had awakened something that grief had put to sleep. "What's that, you get geese?" "There?" Lucy looked up, startled. "Sorry, mister. Samuel, I found it in the chair cushions. Didn't mean to snoop." Samuel approached slowly, recognizing the object before he could see it clearly. Martha's locket, the one she'd worn every day of their marriage, the one he'd buried with her but somehow forgotten to remove from her favorite chair. "May I?" Lucy handed it over with careful reverence. Samuel opened the tiny clasp, revealing 2 miniature photographs, himself and Martha on their wedding day, young and full of impossible dreams. His throat tightened. "She was beautiful," Lucy whispered. Yes, she was. Samuel sat heavily in the chair beside them. "This was Martha's, my wife. She died 3 months ago." "I'm sorry." Lucy's voice carried the weight of someone who understood loss intimately. "Our ma died when Tom was born. Pa said she was the prettiest woman in Kansas. Said Tom had her eyes." Samuel looked at the sleeping boy, seeing now the delicate features that suggested feminine beauty waiting to emerge. "Your pa loved her very much. Till the day he died. Even when the fever made him crazy, he'd call for her." Lucy touched Tom's hair gently. "That's why I can't let them take him. He's all I got left of both of them." Samuel closed the locket, feeling Martha's presence like a whisper in the room. "Promise me you won't let this world make you hard." But keeping that promise might destroy them all. The law would return, questions would be asked, and 2 children who had already lost everything would pay the price for his moment of conscience. "Lucy," Samuel said carefully, "what if there was a way to keep you and Tom together? What if someone wanted to adopt you both?" Her eyes went wide. "You mean it? You'd really want us?" Samuel looked around Martha's house, their house now, maybe, and felt something shift inside his chest like ice breaking up in spring. The rope in his barn seemed very far away. "I think maybe you saved me as much as I saved you." Lucy threw her arm around his neck, careful not to wake Tom. "We won't be no trouble, I promise. I can cook and clean and take care of Tom and—" "Shh." Samuel held her close, remembering how Martha had dreamed of children, how they'd tried for years before accepting that some gifts weren't meant for them. We'll figure it out, together. But outside, hoofbeats echoed in the distance, growing closer. The riders came at midnight, not officials this time, but something worse. Samuel woke to the smell of smoke and torchlight flickering through his windows. 6 men on horseback surrounded his house, their faces hidden behind bandanas, their intentions clear in the way they held burning brands like weapons. "Hartwell," the voice was muffled, but familiar. "Send out the brats, or we'll smoke you all out." Samuel grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. In the lead sat a figure he recognized despite the disguise. Marcus Webb, Millerville's banker and town council president. A man who had made his fortune on government contracts, including ones with state institutions. "What do you want, Webb?" "Those children represent money, Hartwell. State pays good bounties for returned runaways. You're interfering with legitimate business." Behind Samuel, Lucy and Tom crept down the stairs, faces pale with terror. They'd seen this before. The night riders who came for families that crossed the wrong people, who burned out anyone who stood in the way of profit. "Over my dead body," Samuel called out. "That can be arranged." Webb raised his torch, and Samuel saw the future unfolding, his house in flames, 2 children dying for his moment of conscience, Martha's memory consumed by greed and violence. The rope in his barn had offered escape from grief, but this was something worth fighting for. Samuel opened his door and stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. "First man who throws that torch gets a bullet. I've got nothing left to lose, Webb. Can you say the same?" The standoff stretched like a held breath. Then, from behind Webb's riders came the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Sheriff Bradley appeared through the smoke, but he wasn't alone. Behind him rode Judge Morrison from the county seat, along with 6 armed deputies. "Stand down, Webb," Judge Morrison's voice cut through the night like a blade. "By order of the territorial court." Webb's men scattered like startled crows, but Webb himself sat frozen, torch wavering in his grip. "Judge, these are runaways. We have legal right. You have nothing." Morrison's voice was granite. "As of this afternoon, Samuel Hartwell has been granted emergency custody of Lucy and Thomas Morrison. Any interference with that custody is a federal offense." Samuel stared. "Judge, I never filed." "You didn't need to," Morrison smiled grimly. "Seems a certain Inspector Crane was more interested in bounty money than child welfare. My investigation revealed some very interesting financial arrangements between Webb here and the Millerville orphanage. Arrangements that violated several territorial and federal statutes." Webb dropped his torch, the flame hissing out in the frost. Within minutes, he was in custody. His riders fled, and Samuel stood on his porch with 2 children clinging to his legs like lifelines. "The adoption papers will be ready next week," Judge Morrison said as his men prepared to leave. "Assuming you're still interested, Mr. Hartwell." Samuel looked down at Lucy and Tom, saw Martha's locket gleaming around Lucy's neck, where he'd placed it an hour before. "More interested than I've ever been in anything." Years later, when Lucy Hartwell stood in her own kitchen watching her children play with their uncle too, she would remember that November night as the moment her real life began. The moment a broken man chose love over grief, hope over despair. Samuel lived to see Lucy graduate from the Territorial Teachers College, to walk her down the aisle when she married the doctor's son from town. He lived to hold his grandchildren, to teach Tom the ranch work that would make him prosperous, to fill Martha's house with the laughter she'd always dreamed of. The rope in the barn was cut down the morning after the adoption, used to mend the fence where 2 shivering children had once waited for salvation. In the end, Samuel learned what Martha had always known. Sometimes saving others is the only way to save yourself. And sometimes the family you choose becomes more real than the one you were born to. The last thing Samuel saw, on a peaceful morning 30 years later, was Lucy braiding her daughter's hair in Martha's rocking chair, sunlight streaming through windows that had once framed only loneliness and loss. Stories like this aren't just told, they're felt. If you felt it too, subscribe and stay with us.